Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for showing up because I know there's a lot going on online at the moment, and there's a lot of choice, to
Yeah.
visit all kind of meditations, and there's so much going on. I will now mute everybody because that's a little easier. So it's not that you shouldn't be able to say anything, but there's a lot of background noise from people. So my name is Dirk, and this is Hillary, and we both basically are the founder of the Coherence Hotspot network, supported by the Heart Math Institute, um, supported by other organizations, but we'll get a little bit more into that. It's so good to have all of you on board, and thanks again for joining. I was on a call yesterday with Unify, as probably more of you have been, for meditation purposes. And then I thought it's actually very interesting. We live in such a challenging time at the moment, but also such a beautiful time to reinvent ourselves. And so this is the typical stereotype where people say, hey, you can come from fear, or you can come from love, or you can come from faith and from passion. And we have to make a choice. But we're really at this moment. And no matter where you are, in South America, in Central America, in Europe, in North America, we all are in the same boat. And in a way, it's actually a really cool feeling. We know this already, but there's a lot of more people coming on board. Welcome. Just to know that feeling that we are so deeply connected. This is not some kind of spiritual, esoteric saying. And to finish what I started, when I was on one of these calls yesterday with, meditating, and after a while, I was meditating and I thought, yeah, this is what the Coherence Hotspot is about, of course, to help change the field. And we'll get a little bit more, of course, into this today again. But it's not enough to just sit at home and just meditate and to have our intention. We also need to get into action. And that's really important. And I know this also when I worked as an executive in the corporate field. I could not just visualize my goals, down the line and make my targets at the end of the year. I had to do something for it, really. So when you have a very clear, heart-based intention, and you bring your mind, of course, into that as well, you get a beautiful result. And that's basically what we're getting into now today and in the next couple of weeks. We have a couple of really cool announcements to make. But maybe it's good to go over for those who haven't been on the call before. Also welcome. The first call that we did, we decided a few weeks ago that we should start a call. And one of the people that kind of pushed us a little bit into that direction is our dear friend Deb. And thank you for that, Deb, for all the support that you give us. We super appreciate you. Deb is kind of coaching us a bit on a more strategic level, and we're very grateful for that. So we started our first call, and Roland McCready, the research director of the Heart Math Institute, was there, and we talked about coherence. And we asked him, we said, "Oh, Roland, can you explain to us what is coherence?" And so we got into what is actually coherence. But what we also notice is, especially for a lot of you guys who are so intelligent, you're really smart, and we try to explain what coherence is, and the heart, the brain, and the nervous system start aligning. And, as fellas, heart math trainers, we all know that. But I usually like to go like, what does it feel like, to be coherent? What do people feel from you when you are coherent in a good place and they look at you and say, what are you doing? It feels good to be around you. So then we went into the next step, which basically is social coherence, where we have an influence without even trying. We have an influence on the people who are surrounding us. And that is really, really cool. And I know that feeling, and you kind of all know that feeling when you go somewhere in a house, in a family, or you're in a certain city that you think, wow, it's weird vibes here. I remember many years ago, I went back to my home country, the Netherlands. And as soon as I landed and I walked out the gate, I felt just a different vibe. You know, it was people were just only on their phones, and they were rushing and pushing me, were not very graceful, you know, to look where I was looking, and people bumped into you, and people were so busy doing their things for themselves. And I thought it's a very different vibe. And this is also where social coherence comes in, where we look at each other and say, hey, you know, after you, or um, yeah, we have these examples. So today, going from personal coherence into social coherence, into more of an integration, you know, how do we now build this into our day-to-day lives? How do we build this into our work? Most of us, probably who are not retired, maybe have a bit of a challenge, you know, to either you work from home and you're lucky that you still have work and you earn some money, and some people cannot work at all and they're very stressed, they're very anxious, and that is not an easy thing. But again, if we say, you know, from our beautiful spiritual self or our esoteric self, like, oh, these are beautiful times to reinvent ourselves, well, what does that mean? Does that mean, is that just some kind of beautiful concept that people keep throwing around? Or do we truly, truly start implementing that in our daily lives, where we will have to reinvent ourselves? And initially, people don't like change. And we know that, especially when we work with veterans. I see one or two veterans here on the call, which is actually really cool, because they feel inspired to be here. And then often they don't like change. People don't like to change their system because it feels awkward. And often we think it's not the right thing to do. And this is where we most likely are all together right now. Yes, we do see maybe there are potential benefits in what's going on in the longer term. I hear many people say these days, like, yeah, we probably will never go back to normal, whatever that normal is. But still, we're very curious, if not anxious, to think, wow, yeah, but what would it look like? There's a lot of messages going around the world because there's a lot happening that we don't know. And I'm not getting into that right now, but there's a lot that we don't know that's going on in the background. So all in all, we have actually a really good foundation: personal coherence, social coherence, and now we this time we will move more into the integration part. Um, do you do you want to quickly talk about the recap about personal?
Well, so when we first decided to do this, it was quite a while ago, and then all of this sort of hit the world, and the word coherence can be a tricky word for a lot of people. They don't understand really what it means. So what does coherence mean? That was the juice of getting started with this. How can people actually gain personal coherence? And so for anyone who didn't make the first two webinars, we thought just a quick recap of what is personal coherence. And that's when we're entrained, when our systems are actually lined up. Our heart, our brain, our physiology is all in what people call flow, oftentimes, or ease. And then sometimes we can even get into gratitude or really regenerative emotion. So I think it would be really nice. It's 11:10. There's been lots of bells going off, lots of ding dongs. We have a lot of people on the call now. And I think it would be really nice if we could start out with being aware of our breath. When we come into this place, we get sorted, we get centered, or we just notice where we're at. And it's a much better place to learn, to listen, and to create. So I think that would be a really nice way to kick off the rest of the time we have with you.
So you're looking at me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Why don't we just acknowledge where we are right now? Just acknowledge. And the hardest part often is that we want to modify something. We want to explain the way we feel. We want to get answers. That's the brain, the mind getting into action. But if you just take a deep breath really slowly in, and of course you breathe out, and you don't stop, you don't hold your breath at any given moment. You just start developing a slower and deeper breathing. And while you're breathing, maybe you just imagine that the air is flowing through the area of your heart. Just imagine your heart has two lungs you're breathing through. And when the mind kicks in and you start thinking about something, maybe just tell your mind like, hey, you think you're really important, but actually you're not really. And I'm busy with breathing through my heart. So I'll deal with you later. You go back to feeling that breath, that air flow through the area of your chest. Maybe you even feel your shoulders drop a little bit. Maybe you feel the muscles in your face less tense. And there's a truth. When we feel the air flow through our hearts, it means that we're activating basically the intelligence of our heart. And while we're here on a call with people from all over the world, and we're breathing together, and we know that we just don't change our inside or right around us, but we can even feel the connection between us. And maybe while you're breathing and you keep feeling that air flow through the area of your heart, maybe you can feel what it feels like just to be grateful to be here on this call, not wanting to be anywhere else, not wanting to be there yesterday, wanting to be there tomorrow. Just be here now and trust that everything is good at this moment. Just take a few more breaths. And feel that something is shifting inside. And whatever you feel right now that kind of feels good, different, that's probably coherence. That's high coherence. And keep breathing while I'm talking for just one more minute or so. Just keep feeling that air flow. It has an immediate effect on your physiology. You give your bowel system permission to function better. Your brain gets more clear, especially in this time. You trust things more. Not just by laying backwards, but just trusting the things that you're going to do, that they will be the right things to do. Less cortisol in our system for people who have a lot of excess cortisol. So if you feel good, I usually say that's just a side effect of everything that happens, that changes in our physiology. It's amazing, isn't it, that just by a few more minutes of this breathing, that we can change our state. And while you're breathing, maybe slowly open your eyes and glare at your screen. I don't know, whatever setting you have your screen in, maybe you see others participating, and maybe you look at the other people and look at their expression in their face. This is what a coherent person looks like. And again, for those who are not too familiar with this is not just for the softy spiritual people amongst us. This is for the hardcore, military who use this during their work as resilience training. This is for the airline pilot who wants to become more clear, when they are, heading into an approach. This is just get to more clarity in personal situations at work, first responders, anybody, nurses, medical personnel who find peace and ease in all the hard work that they do at this moment. And so this is how we affect other people as well. And Roland was already explaining that a bit. He can, of course, do it way better than we can. but he's more the science, he's the geek, but he's also very intuitive. How we affect other people. Yeah, and that is incredibly important at this given moment. And for the linear mind, this is incredible hard to capture. Just what do you mean, to affect other people? I'm sitting here at home. How can I ever affect other people on the planet? Well, you do, because we are all connected to a larger field, the electromagnetic field, the toroidal field. And Roland already made a calculation for us quite a while ago, last summer, where he said we need about 350,000 people globally to have this global field tip into a more coherent field. And then we all feel it. We make different decisions. We speak differently to one another. We're more open to arguments or other people's values. We collaborate and cooperate in a way smarter way. And isn't that, what we are actually all looking for at this moment? We are searching for answers, but you actually don't have to search too hard, because it's available here. It's access to a deeper knowing, what we call intuition. Anything to add to that?
Well, sometimes when I hear other people speaking of the field, and for me, even 5 years ago, I wouldn't have understood what that meant, the electromagnetic field. And one thing that I remember seeing that made it really clear for me to understand, maybe not how it was affected, but that it actually, was proven through science, was the lineup of the events that happen over time with solar flares. And so there's pictures of what happens when these solar winds and flares come in and they affect the Earth's electromagnetic field, which in turn affects us. And so what they can show through time over a timeline is when these epic world events were happening, world wars, all of these different things line up with the things that were happening to the Earth's field. And so it absolutely affects us as humans. And so this is the reverse. This is what we're talking about. The reverse is true. If we can actually come into a place with our own toroidal field, which we all have, that the heart creates around our body, in and around our body, then we are actually connected, and we can ripple that out. We can ripple that personal coherence out into the field. And this is why Coherence Hotspot. So we have all of these amazing people all over the world who have actually started Coherence Hotspots based on this science, so that when they have a community, they can bring them in, and maybe it's already a community that exists. Maybe it's their singing bowl group or a meditation group. Maybe it's yoga, maybe it's book club. It can be anything where people are coming together and then actually becoming coherent for themselves. And then it doesn't end there. It's like turning that thing, that me, into we. When we ripple it out in larger groups, and as Dirk said, up to 350,000 people, that's when we can make real change. And so for me to get my head around that, it doesn't make sense. But when I see timelines of unrest throughout the world and how it lines up with these things that are happening to the EMF, the electromagnetic field, it all starts to make sense. And this is like bite-sized pieces that we need sometimes, because when we sit down and we listen to someone speak for an hour, maybe about all of these different things that we're finding online right now, Dirk was talking about, there's a lot out there right now. There's a lot to be a part of. But how do we actually integrate it when that stuff isn't out there? How can we create that in our daily life? Last week, we actually put a call to action out to see how many people could every day between last Sunday and today take 1 minute or 2 minutes, some part of their day, where they actually practice that breath. They practice coherence, getting coherent. And so we actually put it out there and asked people to respond and let us know how they were making out. And so we're curious if you have a moment on your little chat screen here on the Zoom call, if you can maybe put in, yes, I did it, or, oh, this is my first time, so I didn't know about it, whatever it is. But we're always really curious to see, because in working with people, we know that when we work with them immersively every day, there's always time carved out in a schedule for us to do that. And then when we're at home, like right now, when everything is like it's just everything is different and very overwhelming for a lot of people. oh, I'll do that later. I've got, it's really hard to get into that when you don't have a cheerleader, someone right there beside you, or a pal, or someone that you meet with on Zoom and practice. And so, yeah, if anybody wants to, yeah, we're getting a few comments in. We did it. I did it several times per day. It feels really good. I want to keep doing it daily. I'm part of a group that meets 5 to 15 minutes every day, some days multiple sessions. Wow, you guys are all pumping in some stuff that's happening
really
here,
good.
practicing twice a day. And so, you know, when the side effect of breath can be that good, why don't we always do it? So it's like one of those things, it's adding in something positive. It's much easier than breaking a bad habit, just to add in good stuff. Because we know through neuroplasticity, when we're used to being on that one track of whatever it is, whether it's stress, anxiety, depression, those are actual neural pathways in our brain. We know what's good. We can research, we can know all the science. But when we actually come down to doing it and applying it, that's where we get stuck and then becoming consistent. So the really cool thing about our hotspotters, we call them out there, is they're there for in these communities to remind people that they can come together. So they were gathering as, groups in physical locations, like all over the world. And now, and doing that, practicing personal coherence, learning about it, and then rippling it out into the field.
Mm-hmm.
And so now that's changed a little bit. We're doing, the hotspotters are getting started now with doing their monthly meetings or weekly meetings through Zoom calls. Zoom's had a lot of action here in the last few weeks.
Yes.
Holy. But yeah, that's something that we'll also speak to, highlighting what some of our hotspotters are doing, working with children in the schools, cafes, working with one of our hotspotters that's on was doing labyrinth walks, Renata, and there's all of these different people who they just know and they understand. And so for the new people that aren't quite there yet, personal coherence is where we start. And this is why we wanted to start this call about 6 weeks ago. It was before everything had happened, and we really just wanted to describe coherence.
It's so cool when Hillary is talking, and I just keep an eye on the chat, and I hope you do the same, because there's so many people, if not all of you, who say, I practice daily, several times. I saw even somebody said, hey, my partner is the Inner Balance app, and I practice like 40 minutes a day. It's pretty cool to see that. And I hope it all makes sense, what we share with you and how we get now also to more of the reality of things when we start implementing it. And even if there's quite a few hotspotters out there, and I don't look in anybody in particular, but if you want to share, for the other people who are not hotspotters, feel free to drop and say, hey, I'm a hotspotter in so-and-so, this is what I do. Or maybe I have incorporated in my work, for example. So other people can see that, and maybe Hillary can also, I have a little hard time focusing when I'm talking, but maybe Hillary can read a few. And
yes, Philippe, in Mexico, I have a Spanish speaking coherence hotspot every night. Every night in Mexico City. We've integrated people from Brazil as well. So how beautiful that, we're doing this, we've committed to doing this weekly. How beautiful though, that you can actually connect with somebody else. If you wanted to do that, you could create your own virtual coherence hotspot if that's what you wanted to do. It's a really nice way to have, accountability. That sounds like such a tough word, but sometimes we really need that to keep us motivated. When we know we're meeting up with someone to go for a dog walk or for our breathing, whatever it is, book clubs, people do these kinds of things because they like to be able to hear what's going on with the other person.
Yeah, absolutely. And so if there are other hotspotters who want to share something, I was actually on the call yesterday with Felipe, our hotspotter in Mexico, and I was together there with his daughter, 11-year-old daughter, and they both have actually an intention to also bring more children in, which is beautiful. Mm-hmm. And I know, for example, my friend from the Netherlands, Marcel, is there, and he has a daughter, and how cool would it be, to have these kids also hook up with each other and just share with one another, how they feel about coherence and how they support their bodies, for example. Anything else there? No.
Yes, people have created new groups in Facebook to do it. Connection practice every day. There's actually links in there that people are dropping. So if you check the chats, you might find somebody in these comments where you can actually connect with them. Also on our website, Coherence Hotspot, there is a map, and you can click on the little tag, and it'll tell you who that person is. And how to connect with them. So
yeah, and I see Sebastian. You know, it's so good to have you also here. And he says, you know, I'll start one in London in 2 weeks, and of course a virtual one for now. He says, and yeah, of course everything goes online, but how cool that we can do that. And maybe you resonate with one person more than with the other, and that is totally cool. It's like choosing music or art. This is normal, and but at some point, when we are getting more in touch on a physical level again, then, you know, the people who live, for example, in London, you know, they say, hey, I want to visit Sebastian, or in Mexico, you know, like, yeah.
Right. So there's one question coming in. How do you become a hotspotter? And so just reach out to us either through email or go to the website, coherencehotspot.com, and reach out, and we can give you all the details around how that works.
Yeah, so what we have done when we started this actually a few years ago, we were only inviting heart math trainers, and at some point, or at least heart math certified people. And then we were getting more with connection with the Resonance Science Foundation from Nassim Haramein. And they said, you know, why don't you do something for yourself that you don't only limit it to heart math certified people, and which was, of course, the best idea. And because why would we? So we developed our own training that's already been there for quite a while, and you can do it online. What Hillary says, you just go online, and when you go through that training, you basically speak the same language as all the other hotspotters, because there need to be some common, you know, knowledge around us when we share this as a hotspotter. And so when you do the training, then you get back to us, and then we'll add you to the map, and you say, hey, this is what I want to start for now online, but as soon as we're, you know, free to go anywhere, I built one into my hospital, or I'm a caregiver wherever. Maybe you are, it doesn't matter actually what field of work you're doing this, of course. Anything else that I missed or not? Well, just go through Kelly Andrews in Florida. She's also online. You know, you can visit her. And so this is briefly featuring some of the hotspotters who are out there and who are doing actually the work that we call integration. I'm not always allowed to say that by Hillary because she doesn't like the word integration.
Well, it makes, yeah, I mean, integration, it's been used a lot. I feel like different words come in and they kind of travel around and become the new hot word. But it really actually is the most important part of personal coherence, social and global, is the integration aspect of it, and how we actually, how do we do that? You know, how do we do that?
Yeah. Yeah, and I was a couple of years ago, I was invited by HeartMath to do to be on their monthly or quarterly call for all the HeartMath trainers out there in the world. And it was basically about how can you be as a HeartMath trainer, for example, or in this case as a hotspotter, how can you incorporate this in your business, and how can it even boost, you know, your business in a way that it's in an economic way, you know, you combine that. Because it's beautiful when you come from your heart. If you have enough spare time, or if you're retired, it's perfect. But for those like us who are working and also need to make a living, you know, from this, it's important that you do this really in a smart way. So I was explaining that a little bit there in the call, and in one of the next episodes, as I call them, from our online gathering, we also would like to get a little bit into the integration part of how you build that into your business or into your direct social circles. So having said that, next week we will specifically feature one hotspotter that will explain a little bit to you, you know, how he or she has been working with this and how it has enriched their lives probably on a social level, on an emotional level, maybe even on an economic level. So that is something that will be happening next week. Do you want to talk a little bit about awake or no?
Well, one of the other things that makes sense is that when you come to this webinar, to this call, that you actually walk away with something that's actionable, something that's helpful. And what we decided to do, because of the numbers, the volume that we have, is to integrate breakout rooms, so that maybe what we can do is actually get into smaller groups where people can talk and compare about what they're doing. If you want to be a part of that, then all you have to do, it's the same thing as today. You just show up. And then there's actual examples of what people are doing, because this is what we find really inspiring for us, and we see other people getting inspired, is when they see how someone else is doing it. And that's the beauty of Coherence Hotspot, is it starts here. It starts with you, your personal coherence. You learn about it, but then you can share it. And maybe that's just within your household with family, and your pets. And that's perfect. And then what are some other ideas once you get that into your system and into your daily routine? So we thought it would be really impactful if we could make this interactive, parts of each one of these calls interactive for all of you. And then we can be, actually discussing the topics and the questions that you are sending into us, because there's quite a few. There's quite a few questions.
Yeah, and then we also start really like adding value for you as well, because that's really, really important, that we can sit here and we can talk about coherence and you begin to understand it. And we will finish this call, of course, with maybe 10 minutes or so of creating group coherence, because that feeds the field. And it's extremely important. Maybe I'll touch base on that a little bit later. But we want to add more value, and we want to help to empower you if you have these little, because I've seen it a lot, where initially people came to me and say, hey, I want to start a hotspot, but can you help me? Because I'm not so sure, I don't think I want to be out there. And I say, well, it is very simple often. It can start very simple. So we want to take that fear, potential fear or uncertainty away and say, we'll help you. And other people here on the call will help you. And we were actually, you want to say?
So one of the things that we really, when we started this a few weeks ago, we wanted to make sure it's consistent every week. And so we were just approached actually by Awake TV. And they've offered that we would do our own series. So a 12-episode series starting sometime this month. And so we're going to be adding that into what we're doing. And it won't necessarily replace this, but it will be very much of what we're doing and how we can help change the field and how we work with each other, even through distance. That distance just does not matter. And so we're very excited about it. It's very new news, and we'll have a lot of organizing to do, and it'll be super exciting, but we would like to be able to have something that you guys can actually go back to. And so we said, yes, of course, we would love to do that. And then we'll see how the rest of the Zoom community for Coherence Hotspot takes off from there as well. Yeah. So we really are here to support each one of you. And that is going to be more, probably more content. We'll have even more content within the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, so this Awake TV is basically a setup like Netflix or Gaia. You're familiar with that. And so they have been featuring like Deepak Chopra. I know that the HeartMath Institute is really keen and they want to start their own series there. And what Hillary said, we are feeling actually very blessed and fortunate that we were invited to have our own program there. And we are also part of a new, basically, what is it? A network that is a global network, and it's called Global Coherence Pulse. And it was initially initiated by one of the people from the Resonance Science Foundation. And we are one of the founding partners there, together with HeartMath and several other organizations. Earth Dance is on there. And it's really cool how we start connecting more and more without a specific agenda, but to truly be open there and to help support everybody who would like to, they feel that it's ready, to change their lives and their approach to life, their approach to work, their approach to relationships. And this is what we'll be getting more into. So it's all very, very exciting. And for us, it is mainly, and we would like also to hear from you, and please mention it in the chat. If there is something specific that you would love to see from us when we start doing these series, that you just let us know. Because if you say, well, if you bring this in, I will be your biggest fan. This is what I would love to see, because we're here for you. We're not here to feature and focus on ourselves. We're here for the community. We'll help organize that. And so please, anything that you feel that will contribute to your personal growth or your economic growth. And on a note like that, I see 1, 2, 3, maybe a few veterans that we've been working with. And we're also thinking of starting very specifically for the veterans, a specific veteran network, a Zoom network, where you can not just meet and just say hi to each other, but where you can practice the tools and the techniques that, Hillary and I always teach the veterans that we work with. And this is not some kind of local Canadian thing, because we are based here in Canada. This is a global thing. Because there's one thing that I cannot speak for Hillary, but I've personally learned, is that working with veterans has enriched my life, and it has given me a deeper understanding in life, a deeper compassion. And these guys have been putting their lives, out there for us. And I think it's extremely important to reach out to them. So if there's any feedback, there's any expertise, there's any veterans who would like to reach out or want to be supportive of that, just let us know as well, because that is another thing that is really important. Anything out there? Yes.
One of the cool things when we talk about measuring coherence, there is a device. So it's called the inner balance. So for those of you who aren't aware of it, it actually measures your heart rate variability. So that's going back to the science aspect of it, like actually what's happening. So it's the beat to beat changes that it's picking up. And so when we learn and see someone changing their HRV, because it can happen just like we can change our brain, it's the same as neuroplasticity. That gives much hope to the people who have been operating in a place of anxiety or stress or trauma. And so through the device that the HeartMath Institute, Roland McCready developed, he spoke on our last call about, or the first call, about how it used to be in a suitcase and you used to have to like cart it around. It was this big equipment you hooked people up to. And now it's just a little device. And so the really beautiful thing that they've done is they've created an app, the Global Coherence app. And they measured it yesterday because they were looking for the 1 million meditators yesterday. And they measured it yesterday and showed everybody who was connected and went on the app with their sensors, they're collecting all that information, and it just lit up like the whole globe. You could see all these huge pockets where it was just all lit up, where people were practicing. So not only can you see what's happening for you personally, and we do use this at the clinic. So this is how we teach people that just a simple intrusion of a thought or a noise in the room can knock you out of this beautiful rhythm that you get into if you're in that mode, that fight or flight mode. So you can actually measure for yourself what's happening, but then you can also see what's happening to the global coherence. And so for me to actually see that in, in black and white or blue and red, whatever color it is, when they have the graphics on there, it's really an amazing thing that he has spent, 30 plus or 25 plus years in the making. And when he takes the time, and this is why we feel so grateful for so many of you showing up today, when he takes the time to be accessible for us, we're so appreciative of, what he does. And this is why we want to make this valuable for you. We're here for you every Sunday for now until we get going with the series. And we'd like to know what supports you the most.
Yeah, and I saw also feedback from a person says, I can't do that with an M-Wave. Now, an M-Wave is a different machine. So you really have to go to the app, the Inner Balance app, because then you have the app on your phone and it gives that the opportunity. But then again, what the most important is, and this episode is about integrating. And for example, to give a brief example, Hillary and I, we work with the veterans in a veteran program, supported by Veteran Affairs. We're basically funded by Veteran Affairs. And what we are a coherence hotspot. And the cool part is that when we start in the morning, we start working with them. We always go into a group coherence for about 5 minutes or so. Usually, well, I'm the one usually who guides them through some of the coherence, and we set the tone for working with them for the entire morning. And that really, really supports them. And when they come back after a couple of weeks, and they, usually they have a break, and everything that we always hear is, says, the breathing, that kind of saved my life. It is really, really important. And so at the end of the morning, when we've been working with them, just before lunch break, we always go back into our heart, and we basically feel gratitude for being connected. And then I often ask them, I say, maybe you can anchor that feeling. And when you walk outside now for your lunch and you walk with your buddies and you feel overwhelmed in a restaurant because it's too noisy, too many people, why don't you go back to the breath? You don't even have to close your eyes. Nobody has to notice. And this is a very specific example that I could quickly come up with, when to integrate it into your own work. If you are a nurse, for example, or you work in healthcare in general, like whatever that is, and you start your shift in the morning, and you say to your colleagues, you say, I have a technique that is very supportive, for all of us. And you get them, just do that for a few minutes, and just notice what a difference it makes throughout the workday. It's just huge. People communicate in different ways, and this is something else that we probably get into, how we can learn more about communication and coherence. That is such a cool thing, and we always see super big changes when people communicate more from their hearts and not from their ego. Want to be right, already listening or barely listening to a person talking, but just already having their feedback ready. And this is how we often communicate, because we feel threatened, we maybe feel not good enough or not enough, and then we want to pitch in all the time. And Hillary and I, we always have like this acronym in the clinic where there's a group of people working, or we work with, and we have this acronym. It's called WAIT, and it basically stands for why am I talking? And then when you take a moment and you take a break and you take a breath and say, why would I actually talk? This is a beautiful way to connect. I actually don't really have something important to contribute except for just being there and connecting with myself. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I see one of our hotspotters has written in, we love to have our team wear the monitors while doing tasks in the day to see how coherence can be reached in real time and with real people, with mindfulness while under different pressures and real situations. And this is exactly true, because we can lock ourselves in a room where it's quiet and we're in our space and we can get coherent. And that's perfect, because you're giving your body a break. You're changing your physiology, and you're splitting that loop up so that your body has a break. However, if you're not really focused and aware during the day that you're having these other responses, wearing the monitor is a really cool way to actually see how it changes, how your energy flows, how the pattern that your heart beats changes based on the different situations that you're in. So we're back to that word coherence again. There's coherence in all different aspects of life, and in all living things, there's a coherence that happens. We're at 11:46 right now, and I think it would be really nice. There's been quite a few comments that have come in, and we really would like to practice for a longer period of time, some heart-focused breathing, and do exactly that. And I think now would be a really great time. You've heard some information. It'd be nice to like segue into a longer pause for each of us, and then wrap it up.
Yeah. So after this, we won't be speaking a lot more. So what you know for the next couple of these episodes is that we will be getting now really into the integration part, where we have people share with one another. You start communicating with one another and learn from one another. And that's really, really cool. I just saw a comment from a friend of mine, and he says, you know, I just have experienced that you don't have to close your eyes. And, you know, you can walk outside in the woods, you can breathe. I do it on my mountain bike, you know, when I start breathing deeper, and I become even stronger with the biking. So it's actually pretty cool. So for next time, we would love you to be there again. We will have a link out pretty soon, and we also record this. We record this specifically for the people who cannot make it. If you have a specific idea that you would love to build on for the next while, reach out to us by email. And we will also read through all of the chats later, because we save it, because we don't have the time now to read through everything. If we can support you in your local environment, if you need some ideas to get you going, maybe you want to have a chat with one of us, feel free to do that. And otherwise, you can also chat more next week with the other people that we will start creating breakout groups. It's a lot of talking for us. And that's just for now the way it is. I hope that you can feel the way we pour our hearts into this, and that we are helping to create a more coherent planet. We have noticed that Gaia, Mother Earth, is actually speaking back to us in beautiful ways, because a lot of things are currently happening on the planet that are very, very positive, beautiful things. You know, the air pollution is less. There's less vibrations in the earth. You know, the oceans are restoring, parts of the oceans restoring themselves, streams, and the air quality for people to breathe in, and all these things. I was talking with a friend of mine in Colombia, and he said, yeah, it's different now. I can see, you know, more clear blue sky and all that. So there's a lot of good things. And this is also an example how we actually are deeply connected through the field, and not just us with one another, but also with Mother Earth. There is a continuous feedback loop. She gives us, she listens to us. And this is not some kind of silly spiritual concept. This is how it works. So maybe when you feel that you are part of that field, that you are here with both feet on the ground, on the planet, and that we have so much to be grateful for, despite of our story, our history. Maybe just slowly, slowly start bringing the awareness to your breath. And notice when you start breathing deeper and slower, it changes almost everything. And while you breathe slower and deeper, just feel the air flow through your chest. And there's nothing you have to do. It's probably the first thing what happened when your mom gave birth to you, that you started breathing. Nobody really has to teach you that. Just feel that air flow. We're always afraid to do it wrong, not the right way, enough or not enough. Just let these old concepts go and just feel the air flow through your chest. That heart of yours that is the seed of that little girl, that little boy inside that always has been there, even if you've lost touch base with her or him. Maybe you can feel it almost as a homecoming. You feel the air flow through your chest, and you can feel grateful for the ability to do that. Feeling grateful for the ability to connect on this level, which is beautiful. There's so many people on this call that I know who spend so much of their time and energy helping other people and families. This is our true essence. Our essence is not our story of pain or not being good enough. Our essence is the beauty that we came here to be, that we can find in our hearts. And when we breathe through that, we expand on that. It's what we call coherence. And usually when you breathe like this and it feels good, you want to do it more often. And it's so encouraging to see that you practice this a lot. And while you're breathing, and you create coherence in your own body, just know that you're not just affecting yourself. We together here, I just calculated, we affect about 1.5 million people right now. Just by creating coherence. Stay with the awareness in your heart when you breathe. You don't have to go with your awareness to the people who need help, who are hungry, who are starving, who are so insecure, who are full of pain. We stay in our hearts. Otherwise, we lose ourselves amidst all of this. And when we breathe through our heart space, there's nothing we have to do. It automatically ripples out into the field. And maybe you want now, while you're breathing, and you feel the activation of your heart's intelligence, you breathe through that. Maybe you want to bring into your heart a few people or groups or people that you really care about or situations that you care about. And see if you can feel those people in your heart while you're breathing. Don't leave your body. You breathe through that deeply in and out, slowly. And always remember, you're more than enough. And so the moment you don't really want anything, that's the moment you can have anything you want. When you get out of your own way, this is when you're the highest coherent. And this is when you contribute the most to our beautiful society. I would actually now to maybe propose in the list, there's anything else you want to add? No? Yes? No?
For those of you out there who are still wondering really the details around personal coherence and all that it means, getting a better understanding, there's been quite a few comments coming in how to start a hotspot. If you go to our website, we have the Coherence Hotspotter training, and we also have a beautiful program that we just created called Mind Your Worldview. And we include, literally it's steeped in science, but it is bite-sized pieces in our terms so that we can have an understanding. And it's in all different, it's in video, it's in written, there's resources, there's links, there's so much in there. It's a really beautiful program. So we will be carrying on in these weekly gatherings, but if there's stuff that you want to know about, that you're curious about in between, more detailed information, that's where you can find that. We've collected it from all over in the last 4 years of working with veterans. We know what it takes for someone to actually not just be able to become personally coherent, but why it's sometimes hard to get it to stick. And it's not because we're, you know, stupid, it's because we're so up here, and that's neuroplasticity. So we learn all the reasons why we can give ourselves a break, be easier and kinder to ourselves, and actually learn what coherence is. So thank you all for coming today. We really appreciate you all showing up, and we love all that you share in the chat. If there's something specific that you've asked us in the chat, if you could actually probably email that question if it's a detailed question, so that we don't miss it. We want to make sure we don't miss any of the comments, and sometimes sometimes that can happen. So.
Yeah, but we will read through all of them. And what I actually wanted to do now is, because we're all deeply connected with one another, and I will unmute all of you now, and maybe you can just say thank you, goodbye, in your own language, and because you're all on the speaker now, and we can say hi.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Love to all.
Love to do that with all of you.
And thank you. Todos. Ciao.
Thank you, Hillary, everybody.
Blessings.
Gracias.
Merci. Au
Sure.
revoir.
Bye now.
Bye.
That will be a
Doi doi. Everybody, have a beautiful day.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye. Bye, everyone. Lots of love. See you soon.
Doei doei.
Hoi.